is Cameron Cowan. Welcome to the Cameron Journal Newshour. Oh, it has been a long day in more ways than one. Um, Today ooh, my hair is still good. I have done 3 podcast recordings today. I was supposed to do 5, but somebody dropped. They didn't show up. So I actually got a little bit of a break in a day when I didn't think I was going to have a break. um, and it's been a long week. I did a bunch of podcast recordings last week, but it's a lot of great new interviews and material. And we're going to be short tonight because I have one right after this. And it's really great because she's Palestinian and we're telling the story of her life and her husband's life. And in the light of the recent ceasefire that was agreed to last week, I think we talked about that, and its implementation over the weekend, it seems timely and efficient to be talking about that. So that's really great. And it was been a great conversation today. I got to talk about self-publishing and publishing in general with somebody. I got to talk about a man who his fiction was inspired by He-Man in the 80s, and storytelling and superheroes and Watchmen and all sorts of great stuff. That's always, when I get to talk about story with people and do those sorts of interviews and conversations, that always warms my heart and fills my soul. And then also talk about life and the prison system and the crazy twists and turns that life can take. So today's just been a tour de force of just amazing, great, amazing, great stuff, and has been really, really nice. I have so many new episodes coming and so much new content coming. It's really out of control. Last week I interviewed so many great people. It's piling up. I don't know how the hell I'm gonna get it all edited and uploaded and everything on time, because it's a lot, but it's all good. And the show has grown. So thank you for everybody who is watching, who listens, all this type of thing. There's just been so many new viewers, especially if you come here from like a YouTube short situation. We've been getting lots of new views. A whole new community is growing. So thank you all for watching and listening to this. I really appreciate it. And thank you to my gaggle of live viewers. I'm not going to do it tonight, but one of the things I'm going to start doing probably in February is over on the Cameron Journal Discord. Yes, we have a Discord. I'm going to start maybe some after chat, little hangouts afterwards, so we can come and hang out and chat, and it helps people get on the Discord, and hopefully that will, get that Discord community active and all this type of thing. So really looking forward to that as well as a new thing, and especially, that's also a benefit of signing up with Cameron Journal Plus. So if you love what I do and you want to support it, head over to CameronJournal.com, click on Cameron Journal Plus, and you can sign up for a Cameron Journal Plus membership. It's only $5. That's right, $5. For the price of Starbucks, you can support the Cameron Journal. So make sure to head over to CameronJournal.com, and I think it's /plus, but if you just go to CameronJournal.com, it's in the menu, second line, towards the end, CJ Plus, click on that, and you can go sign up for that. I wanted to mention that because I never mention it, and I am trying to get some more members on Cameron Journal Plus, because it will encourage you to start doing exclusive content and all that sort of thing. So make sure to go sign up if you love what I do and want to support it, because independent news media, especially in today's political environment, does not survive in a vacuum. So obviously today is January the 20th, 2025, and President Donald J. Trump was inaugurated for the second time today at noon. I watched it live streaming. It was held indoors in the Capitol Rotunda, it looked like, because of the weather in DC. And the roads and everything were quite empty and bare, and there was some small seating areas, but the crowd size was very small. And a lot of the MAGA people felt bad because they were It took the jumbotrons down from outside and all this type of thing, and so they felt really bad because they'd flown all the way to DC to see it and basically got shut out. However, all the millionaires, billionaires, tech types, and all this type of thing were certainly on hand um, to witness the induction of Dear Leader. So obviously, President Biden has returned to Delaware, and Kamala Harris is back in California. And the Trump people are having their whole inauguration day celebrations and dinners and all this type of thing. There is sort of a event rally thing going on this evening. There is a whole list of executive actions that Trump wants to take. I have a list from WhiteHouse.gov of some stuff they plan to do. I watched the whole speech. It was about 10 minutes. And it was rather bleak. It was definitely it was a perspective on this country. There were parts that I agreed with. There were parts that I didn't. Certainly, good positive action on immigration is vitally important. We did get official word recently that Vivek Ramaswamy, after his tweet situation that sparked a whole discussion on H-1B visas and all this type of thing, which I talked about on the Saturday newsletter, that he is not going to be a part of the government Office of Efficiency, Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. He's going to be running for governor of Ohio. So, that was so ends the illustrious White House career of Mr. Ramaswamy. Didn't make it out of the transition. Oh well. That's kind of where we're at. I did also see that Pete Hegseth today got voted out of committee and will go to the floor of the Senate. So it looks like that confirmation is going through. I anticipate by and large Trump's going to get who he wants. I don't think there's going to be a lot of pushback from anybody. Obviously, for those of us on the left and for those of us who were Kamala Harris voters, today is a tough day. I can't imagine what it must have been like for her to sit up there and watch him get sworn in. Much bigger person than I am. I wouldn't have shown up. And so there were some curious absences, including Michelle Obama. I don't blame her. And so that that was definitely tough to see, tough to watch. Was definitely not how a lot of us was hoping today would be like. Obviously, I was hoping we would be swearing in the first woman president of the United States today. And instead, we're voting in oligarchical, authoritarian dictatorship, basically. Dictatorship with a veneer of democracy for legitimacy, much like Turkey or Hungary or Russia. We're joining a great club of wonderful, strange people among the family of nations. And as I was sitting there kind of being like, well, liberal democracy, we had a nice run, 248 years. It was good while it lasted. Now we're going to be entering into a very different territory. We've talked a lot about how the second term is going to be different. Trump says it's going to be different. I will say that Trump was definitely... he was quieter. He was more taciturn. He was not as blusterous. Even when he was calling for the seizing of the Panama Canal, or when he was calling for renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, he was definitely... I wouldn't say it was presidential, but I will say that it was definitely taciturn. It was definitely more, I think, humble as Trump goes, which I thought was an interesting kind of approach to the whole thing. It was definitely short. It was not any long... In the 19th century, they did these long speeches, 2 hours, sort of thing. But it was short. It was sweet. It was to the point. There's a lot on the agenda. certainly. Um, and things are going to move very quickly. I would advise everyone, regardless of your political affiliation, take breaks. It's going to be a long day, night, tomorrow, and so on, and so on, and so on. There's going to be a lot happening all at once, um, especially for immigrants and their families and this sort of thing. It's going to be a long several days, and it from the rumor on the street is, although I've not seen this confirmed anywhere, mass deportations will begin next week, um, which is a lot. That's yeah, that's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be dramatic. As I said, take breaks from the news. I think one of the best things about this time around, and I know this is true for a lot of people I've talked to, and it's certainly true for me, we're not going to be slavishly reporting on every single tiny thing Trump does. That's not the move this time. Although Saturday Night Live kind of made fun of MSNBC for doing exactly that on the cold open on Saturday, which I thought was hilarious because they're definitely like that. No, as you know, I don't slavishly report everything the government does. I talk about issues, I talk about culture, all this type of thing. That's what we're going to be doing for the foreseeable, and that's what is going to be important to get through the second Trump administration. Um, we are definitely, given who he surrounded himself by, we are definitely moving into a place where, as I've kind of been saying on Twitter today, the computers are taking over. Who was on stage? Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg. It's tech. It's Silicon Valley. Um, the and I think this is very important. Tech has had a lot. They've had a lot of money, a lot of attention. Users. They have had a lot of pull in society, but what they haven't had is political power. And what's different now, this time around, is they have all the money, hundreds of billions of dollars. I think collective net worth is 2 trillion. Um, but most importantly, um, they have political power now. The computers are taking over. The computers are in charge. And that's AI, that's social media, that's, technology, that is, it's social media, it's technology, it's driving cars, it's spaceships, it's, in Bezos's case, shopping. It's movie series. In the fight for the culture war, a lot of that centers on tech and the conversations we've had on censorship and fact checking and all this sort of thing and all the stuff that we've been tracking for the last couple of weeks. The reality is today, the computers are in charge now. Technology not only has all the money, they have all the political power. And they are going to use that to serve their own ends. And quite frankly, there's not a whole lot the rest of us can do to stop it. Regardless of what happens with elections and all this type of thing, democracy is going to matter much less now than it did before. And you have this marriage of technology and government together, quickly driving down the road. It wasn't, manufacturers of physical goods in those seats. It was tech that was sitting in those seats. You have to remember, a lot of these tech guys were steeped at a very early age in libertarian Ayn Rand sort of stuff. The whole impetus of tech is make it fast, make it big, make it popular so the government can't regulate us. That's been the ethos of tech for 20 years at this point. And now we see that now they're not trying to hide from the government. They're now in control of government. The computers are here. They now run things. They're going to be making massive policy determinations. They're not just lobbying and putting pressure on government. They've got the ear of. They're involved, especially Elon Musk. They're now deep into government and they want to run government like a tech company, like a startup, where those who can provide value and all this type of thing get priority and everyone else does not. Why the hell do you think they want to get rid of the Department of Education and return education to the states? Very simple. It's because if you can, it's dog eat dog. If you can make it and you have talent and whatever have you, you get to live and you get to have an education. And if you can't, if you're special needs, if you are coming from a different racial background, whatever have you, out you go. that they do not want to care for all of society. They've never wanted to care for all of society. It's the power of the strong. Those who make it do, and if you don't, go die, basically. And that's where we're at in this country, and that's who's now in charge, and we all have to get used to that fact. And as I've told you many times since I brought the Newshour back, this job got a lot more dangerous thanks to Trump's election. And we've had a couple months to get used to the idea and kind of get back to some normalcy and all this type of thing. Our respite's over. We're going to be plowing ahead quite significantly in the new Trump agenda. I think people are going to be shocked at how much of Project 2025 gets implemented. I do. Everyone's like, oh, he disavowed it and got the guy fired. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I looked over it. There's a through line from what's in that document to what's in Trump's speeches. Not all of it. There's other kind of crazy parts that he's not gone along with. And certainly when it comes to things like gay marriage and abortion, he's a lot more moderate than a lot of the Christian nationalists right are. But there's a lot of it in principle that's going to be there. And especially with this whole America First strategy and all this type of thing, we'll get into some of the stuff he wants to do. But the main thought I have for today is the computers are in charge now. They are. The computers are in charge now. And if we kind of look at that from that perspective, that the computers are in charge, tech now has money and political power. We're living in the America of Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, all of these tech guys. This is the America we're going to be forced to live in. And if you are a marginalized member of society, hi. If you're a disabled, if you are not able to compete in their dog eat dog world, you will be left behind. If you're elderly and dependent on Medicare, they want to cut that. Social Security's not looking too great either. The reality is we're living in a society ran by people who have no patience for anybody who can't keep up, who can't, who might need a special accommodation or anything like that, or might need accessibility or whatever have you. They don't care about any of that stuff. That's all woke nonsense to them. They're getting the America they've always wanted. They've been waiting 45 years for this moment. And today, they're getting their wish. Everything they ever wanted is going to happen, pretty much. And anybody who does not fit within a certain narrow mold of society should be frightened at what that means. And should be damn scared of how they're going to live in this country when there's no protections, no guardrails, no social safety net. You either make it or you go. If when you get laid off, well, that's just how life goes. If you get disabled and can't work, well, sucks to be you. We already have that attitude a lot in this country anyway, and it's about, if you can imagine, it's about to get worse. This is the America that we are living in. So with all that said, let's turn to headlines, shall we? Here, we'll do this, and we'll switch over to this. Nope. This one. There we go. Oh, yes. Let's start with this video. So, moments ago, Elon Musk was on stage at the inauguration rally, and Elon Musk, Department of Government Efficiency. That's not even a real department, not authorized by Congress. But anyway, he was caught doing a familiar hand gesture. See if you can name this one. We don't need to hear what he's saying. Just gonna leave that there. That's who's in charge of your country now. Just, whatever. If that matters to you at all, Speaking of the inauguration of President Trump, I couldn't find the same thing Vosh found, but I did find this sort of list of various and sundry things President Trump is going to do. So it's President Trump's America First priorities. And the first one is Make America Safe Again. And we have Trump will take bold action to secure our border and protect American communities. This includes ending Biden's catch and release policies, reinstating Remain in Mexico, building the wall, and ending asylum for illegal border crossers, cracking down on criminal sanctuaries, and enhancing vetting and screening of aliens. President Trump's deportation operation will address the record border crossings of criminal aliens under the prior administration. The president is suspending refugee resettlement, and after communities were forced to house large and unsustainable populations of migrants, straining community safety and resources. The armed forces, including the National Guard, will engage in border security, which is a national security, and will be deployed to the border to assist existing law enforcement personnel. President Trump will begin the process of designating cartels, including the dangerous Tren de Aragua, as foreign terrorist organizations and use the Alien Enemies Act to remove them. The Department of Justice will seek the death penalty as the appropriate punishment for heinous crimes against humanity, including those who kill law enforcement officers and illegal migrants who maim and murder Americans. The president will unleash American energy by ending Biden's policies of climate extremism, streamlining permitting and reviewing for rescission all regulations that impose undue burdens on energy production and use, including mining and processing of non-fuel minerals. President Trump's energy actions empower consumer choices in vehicles, shower heads, toilets, washing machines, light bulbs, and dishwashers. President Trump will declare an energy emergency and use all necessary resources to build critical infrastructure. President Trump's energy policies will end leasing to massive wind farms that degrade our natural landscapes and fail to serve American energy consumers. President Trump will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. All agencies will take emergency measures to reduce the cost of living. President Trump will announce the America First trade policy. No details on that yet. America will no longer be beholden to foreign organizations for our national tax policy, which punishes American businesses. The president will usher in a golden age. This was a big line he had at the inauguration speech today. Golden age for America by reforming and improving the government bureaucracy to work for the American people. He will freeze bureaucrat hiring except in essential areas and end the onslaught of useless and overpaid DEI activists buried into the federal workforce. He will pause burdensome and radical regulations not yet in effect that Biden announced. President Trump is announcing an unprecedented slate of executive orders for rescission. President Trump is planning for improved accountability of government bureaucrats. The American people deserve the highest quality service from people who love our country. The president will also return federal workers to work, as only 6% of employees currently work in person. President Trump is taking swift action to end the weaponization of government against political rivals and ordering all document retention as required by law. President Trump is also ending the unconstitutional censorship by the federal government. No longer will government employees pick and require the erasure of entirely true speech. On the president, that's an interesting phrase. Require the erasure of entirely true speech. That's an interesting phrase. On the president's direction, the State Department will have an America First foreign policy. The president will establish male and female as biological reality and protect women from radical gender ideology. He also mentioned this in this speech. He announced that it will be the policy of the United States that male and female are the only genders. American landmarks will be named appropriately to honor our nation's history. In the speech, he mentioned that Mount Denali in Alaska will get renamed to Mount McKinley. But that also goes along with we're going to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. So, that's just day one. This is a preview into the next 4 years and how this is going to go. And they've got all the great stuff, administration, J.D. Vance, and even the wives get a little blurb and the cabinet, but no, apparently they'll probably fill this in later. So, that's that end of things. I continue to be amazed at the effort being put in. Let me change from the screen. The effort being put in to do a lot of these things. The America First trade policy is fine. We saw it the first time. Biden didn't change a single tariff. I imagine it'll be more of the same. It's going to increase cost of living though, and it's going to increase the price of everything. So that you look forward to higher prices. The price of nothing is going down with the new tariff regime. As far as the America First foreign policy, I hope that doesn't mean what I think it does, but I know they're planning on withdrawing from the World Health Organization because of the pandemic. I got in an argument today with somebody, and I'm kind of like, it was a pandemic. We had to do public health interventions to try to save people's lives. And he's like, people will never allow that ever again. Like, the whole pandemic lockdown, which isn't even really a lockdown in this country, so broke people's brains. He was like, it's our rights, and you Americans have no right to get rid of our rights. And I'm kind of like, oh my God, no one, I mean, it was an emergency. And you're over here talking about rights as if what rights? You do not have a right to go into a hospital that's usually owned either by a nonprofit or a private corporation. If they choose to not let visitors in because of that's their choice. That's not a government a government sort of thing. And I tried to be like, it was a pandemic, it was a health crisis. Like, well, that's a moral question, not a government question. Get ready. This is what we're facing. This is what we're going to be doing. Just so you know, this is what we're going to be doing for the next 4 years. This is it. This is it. This is what you voted for, everybody. You know, if you voted for him, this is what you voted for, all this sort of thing. Like, good luck out there. I mean, we have another pandemic brewing with H5N1, and Lord knows nobody's going to want to take precautions and preventions this time. We will get nothing, and considering it has a 50% death rate, way worse than COVID, people are going to die. I mean, and that's just one thing. That's just one tiny aspect. We're not even getting into Department of Education stuff yet. We're not even getting into HHS stuff, what RFK Jr. wants to do with FDA, all this sort of thing. They're talking about all in critical infrastructure for energy. That probably means they're going to want to put back the Keystone Pipeline that Biden canceled and got tore down, and briefly depressed scrap prices because of all the metal. All this sort of thing. Yeah, no, it's, I mean, this is... Again, this is what you voted for. It didn't have to be this way. So, speaking of things that didn't have to be this way, let's talk. Let me get back to this screen here. Let's talk about, so, the Jack Smith report. So, last week, the Jack Smith report, part of it, was released. And this was kind of the news story about it. And it says here that the department's view that the Constitution prohibits the continued indictment and prosecution of a president is categorical and does not turn on the gravity of the crime as charged, the strength of the government's proof, or the merits of the prosecution. Indeed, but for President Trump's election and imminent return to the presidency, the office assessed that the admissible evidence was sufficient to obtain and sustain a conviction at trial. The Justice Department delivered the 137-page volume, representing half of Mr. Smith's overall final report, with the volume about Mr. Trump's other federal case accusing him of mishandling classified documents, still confidential, to Congress just after midnight on Tuesday. There was a court case that they were waiting on as well. Then I want to shift over to Denise Wheeler here on Twitter, who did a really great breakdown of what was in the report. And some of these are, in my mind, quite shocking. Let me take a quick drink. One, the criminal scheme to overturn the 2020 election results, page 2 to 3. Substantial evidence demonstrates that Mr. Trump engaged in an unprecedented criminal effort to overturn the legitimate results of the election using fraud and deceit to retain power. Page 8, Trump's pressure on state officials to ignore true vote counts and manufacture fraudulent slates of presidential electors in 7 states. And we know that because we have the actual physical evidence of them trying to do that. Page 11, Trump and co-conspirators orchestrated a scheme to have fraudulent electors from 7 states sign and submit false certifications. And we have that actual documentation. Snippet from page 11, Trump ensured the plan was carried out, directing co-conspirators and monitoring progress, including deceptive assurances to fraudulent electors. On the January 6th attack, page 23, Trump directed an angry mob to the United States Capitol to disrupt the certification process and leverage violence to delay proceedings. Page 23, he knew many of the election fraud claims he promoted were false, but used them to stoke anger among his supporters. Page 5, unawareness of falsehood. Evidence from officials in his administration, including the vice president, indicated Trump was repeatedly told there was, quote, no evidence to support his claims, unquote. Page 112 on threats and harassment of witnesses. A significant challenge to the office faced after Mr. Trump's indictment was his ability and willingness to use his influence and following on social media to target witnesses, courts, and department employees. After Mr. Trump publicly assailed these individuals, threats and harassment from his followers inevitably followed. See ECF number 57, that's an attachment. At 3, one witness identifying Mr. Trump's tweets about him as the cause of specific and graphic threats about his family. A public official providing testimony that after Mr. Trump's tweets, he required additional police protection. In the context of the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, Mr. Trump acknowledged that his supporters, quote, listened to him like no one else. The same pattern transpired after Mr. Trump's indictment in the election case. As the D.C. Circuit later found, Mr. Trump's, quote, repeatedly attacked those involved in the case through threatening public statements as well as messaging daggered at likely witnesses and their testimony, unquote. The next day, one of his supporters called district court judge's chambers and said, hey, we can all read that. Trump doesn't get elected in 2024, we're coming to kill you. You'll be targeted personally, publicly, your family, all of it. Report conclusion. Indeed, but for Mr. Trump's election and imminent return to the presidency, the office assessed that the admissible evidence was sufficient to obtain and sustain a conviction at trial. Key legal findings. Conspiracy to defraud and obstruct on page 33 through 49. Presidential immunity on page 122. Political salience. Safeguarding elections and accountability. And constitutional conflicts. The report highlights that Trump's conduct lacked historical precedent, noting, quote, no adequate non-criminal alternative to prosecution, unquote. So, yeah, there we go. So, as it turns out, people were right all along. Yeah, he did it, and it was stunning, and it was bad. And he, in his criminal case, he just got convicted but was given no sentence. That happened last week as well. He is a convicted felon. Gonna make travel hard. And we know from the Jack Smith report that, the big lie was a lie, even though he's suing CNN for saying that for $157 million. I had a friend on who literally said, well, I hope he's gonna finally bring the media to heel so they can stop saying lies. And I'm like, it's not a lie if it's true. And Trump lies a lot, and the big lie about the election was a big lie. And there's a lot of people who acknowledge that that's all stupid sort of thing, but here we are. Oh, this is the story about the Israeli government approving the Gaza ceasefire. Yes. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said the deal, which includes the release of hostages for Palestinian prisoners, will go into effect on Sunday. So, in the Israeli-approved ceasefire with Hamas early Saturday, setting up the first reprieve in Gaza in over a year, Palestinians have celebrated the truce with the hope that it will finally end the devastating 15-month war, and Israelis are anxiously awaiting the return of scores of captives abducted by Hamas. The full Israeli cabinet passed the agreement during a meeting that continued unusually into the Jewish Sabbath and into Saturday morning. The Israeli government said it would go into effect on Sunday. Israeli civilians will have a short window to file objections, but the courts are widely expected to allow the agreement to go forward. The Gaza war began with the Hamas-led attack on southern Israel on October 7, 2023, which killed 1,200 people in Israel and saw 250 taken hostage. Israel's ensuing military campaign has leveled much of Gaza, and tens of thousands of Palestinians and hundreds of Israeli troops have been killed. The conflict went far beyond Israel's borders, setting off a domino effect that's still reshaping the region. Hezbollah began attacking at Israel in solidarity with Hamas, leading to an Israeli campaign that hobbled the Lebanese militant group. And Israel and Iran, which backs both groups, exchanged direct blows, with Iranian missiles flying towards Israel and Israeli fighter jets bombarding Iran. The ceasefire deal involves a complex array of Israeli withdrawals, security mechanisms, and hostage for prisoner swaps. Under its terms, Israel and Hamas will observe a 42-day truce, during which Hamas will release 33 Israeli hostages in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. During the truce, both sides will negotiate for the next phase, an end to the war and the withdrawal of Israeli forces. So, that's where we are on that end of things. No one really noticed this, but I wanted to talk about Biden's farewell address quickly, because a lot of the stuff that he said was so obvious today at the inauguration, it's not even funny. He said today, quote, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead, Mr. Biden said. While Mr. Biden did not explicitly name Mr. Trump, his remarks were straight at the tension at the heart of the incoming administration, in which billionaires like Elon Musk are positioned to wield enormous influence over the next 4 years. Are they really populists intent on shaking up the government to benefit working people who've been left behind by the establishment, or are they just billionaire disruptors out to enrich themselves? Mr. Biden's warning of an unelected oligarchy taking shape echoed a similar one by President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who spoke about the military-industrial complex in his farewell address. The Biden version referred to the tech industrial complex, in which he warned of the erosion of truth itself brought forth by unchecked social media platforms, a reference to Meta doing away with fact checkers this week, and artificial intelligence. Quote, Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation enabling the abuse of power, unquote, Mr. Biden said. Quote, the powerful voices want to wield their unchecked influence to eliminate the steps we've taken to tackle the climate crisis, to serve their own interest for power and profit, he said. We must not be bullied into sacrificing the future of our children and our grandchildren. We must keep pushing forward and push faster. The speech in many ways wrapped up not just 4 years in the White House, but more than half a century of public service for Mr. Biden, who came of age in an era of politics that he no longer sees around him. It also served as a plea for the country to remember its roots as he leaves the office he has coveted since he was a young man. Quote, after 50 years at the center of all of this, I know that believing in the idea of America means respecting the institutions that govern a free society, he said. Our system of separation of powers, checks and balances, it may not be perfect, he said, but it's maintained our democracy for nearly 250 years, longer than any other nation in history that's ever tried such a bold experiment. Mr. Biden called for term limits and ethics reform for the Supreme Court and banning members of Congress from trading stocks. He also mentioned, quote, we need to amend the Constitution to make clear that no president is immune from the crimes that he or she commits while in office, unquote. Yeah, and then they go into his, unpopularity and the fact the last time he did an address in the Oval Office was when he decided to leave the race. And one story that I think is interesting, and it's not getting the attention it should, although it should, was recent conversations some people, even leftist people, had with Biden, and the fact that it's become plainly obvious Biden's not all there. Intellectually, he's not been there. And based upon recent reporting, that's been true for a while. I think we covered that a couple weeks ago. I think there's a lot of stuff that happened, and there was some reporting on this, that Biden doesn't know a lot of the stuff that was done. And a lot of the stuff that was signed and implemented and regulations put in and all this sort of thing. There's a lot of, I don't think he was necessarily as in charge as he should have been, or as aware of things as he should have been. And in fact, it's kind of become a bit of a joke, especially the last couple months. It's an ignominious end to 50 years of public service, that he's sort of this doddering old man who's just kind of lost it and has been just sort of limping through the end of this presidency. And in some people say even from the very beginning he wasn't necessarily all there, and in some ways you can kind of see it, in the 2020 Biden. The 2020 Biden that was campaigning and the one you see today is a man who's greatly diminished. And I think perhaps some of the issues and problems that have been going on and happening and all this type of thing are because of that. And I think some of the things, especially regulations and things like that were put through, he didn't necessarily know or didn't fully understand or wasn't fully aware of. And that's it kind of puts a punctuation mark on the whole presidential debate thing in June and him leaving the race in July and Kamala Harris and everything that's happened in 2024. It's an uncomfortable punctuation to that whole sad story. And, farewell, President Biden. He was the man we needed at the time we needed him. I just wish he were 10 years younger when that moment happened. So he could have been more present with it all. It was a crisis moment, and to some degree he rose to the occasion, but unfortunately age and circumstance prevented him from really doing, I think, what he really wanted to do. And that's quite sad. I think he's unpopular now. I think history will be far more kind to him than it is right now. But he'll probably be remembered as sort of this kind of, much like Henry Harrison, the other guy to serve in between President Truman between two guys. It was kind of the same story with Henry Harrison. Gets in, is unpopular, loses to the guy he won with before. It's going to be a kind of a very similar narrative. I hope they realize that Biden tried, and unfortunately got taken down by a lot of stuff that he wasn't even responsible for. The trans panic, all of these things. It defined a presidency in a way that it probably shouldn't have. And that's unfortunate. Speaking of, the retail theft thing, we're going to save that till next week because it's so good, but we don't have time because I've got it recording. But it's just, we just don't have time. But I do want, before we go and I get ready for this recording, I did want to talk about the whole Curtis Yarvin thing for a hot second. Because, so, Curtis Yarvin is a very popular right-wing political blogger. He's been around for a long time, longer than me. He's been around for a long time. And this interview has been doing the rounds, and so I wanted to kind of talk about it a little bit, especially the part where he talks about the president being sort of a CEO of the country. And it says that American democracy is a sham beyond fixing, and having a monarch-style leader is the way to go. So why is democracy bad, and why would having a dictator solve the problem? And Yarvin says, let me answer that in a way that would be relatively possible to readers of the New York Times. You probably heard of a man named Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Yes. And then he says, I do a speech sometimes where I'll just read the last 10 paragraphs of FDR's first inaugural address, in which he essentially says, hey, Congress, give me absolute power or I'll take it away. So FDR actually did that level of power. Yeah, he did. There's a great piece I've sent to some people that I know that are involved in the transition. And he said, well, I sent the piece to Mark Andreessen. It's an excerpt from the diary of Harold Ickes, who's FDR's Secretary of the Interior, describing a cabinet meeting in 1933. What happens in this cabinet meeting is that Francis Perkins, who's the Secretary of Labor, is like, here, I have a list of projects that we're going to do. FDR personally takes this list, looks at the projects in New York, and is like, this is crap. Then at the end of this thing, everybody agrees that the bill would be fixed and then passed through Congress. This is FDR acting like a CEO. So is FDR a dictator? I don't know. What I know is that Americans of all stripes basically revere FDR, and FDR ran the New Deal like a startup. The question goes, the point you're trying to make is that we've had something like a dictator in the past, and therefore it's not something to be afraid of now. Yeah, look at the objective reality of power in the U.S. since the Revolution. You'll talk to people about the Articles of Confederation. You're just like, name one thing that happened in America under the Articles of Confederation, and they can't unless they're a professional historian. Next, you have the first constitutional period under George Washington. If you look at the administration of Washington, what is established looks a lot like a startup. It looks so much like a startup that this guy, Alexander Hamilton, who's basically a recognizably startup bro, is running the whole government. He's basically the Larry Page of this republic. And then he goes on to say, it's not even that democracy is bad, just that it's very weak. And the fact that it's very weak is easily seen by the fact that unpopular policies like mass immigration persist despite strong majorities being against them. So the question of, is democracy good or bad, is I think a secondary question to, is that what we really have? When you say to a New York Times reader democracy is bad, they're a little bit shocked. But when you say to them politics is bad or even populism is bad, they're like, of course, these are horrible things. So when you want to say democracy is not a good system of government, just bridge that immediately to saying populism is not a good system of government. And then you'd be like, yes, of course, actual policy and laws should be set up by wise experts and people in courts and lawyers and professors. Then you'll realize that what you're actually endorsing is aristocracy rather than democracy. It goes on for a while. This has been making the rounds. I would encourage you to go read it and get familiar with Curtis Yarvin. He is a big part of the new administration. As it said, powerful conservatives are listening to him. He's been around forever. That's not new. When the tweets first started going around, I tweeted and I remarked, this is the culmination. All of this is the culmination of a conversation that started at the Federalist Society in 1951 and at the John Birch Society shortly thereafter on how they could get rid of the New Deal. Not 100 years later, here we are. And Curtis Yarvin is one of those who certainly thinks along that way and thinks aristocracy, oligarchy, and a certain, CEO of America is good. There's only one problem. Neither you nor I are on the board of directors. So I don't know what we're going to do with that, about that, for that. But that's the news this week. That's the headlines. Thank you all so much for listening. I love you for watching. I appreciate it. You all are amazing. make sure to head over to CameronJournal.com for the latest stuff. Sign up for my newsletter every Saturday. I deliver a great newsletter with the best of the Cameron Journal from the week and unique content. So make sure to check that out. It's free to sign up. If you love what I do, make sure to sign up for a Cameron Journal Plus membership. I would really, really appreciate it right now. If you want to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Cameron Cowan. Same thing for Instagram, Facebook.com/Cameron L. Cowan, and at Cameron Journal on TikTok, because the ban got defeated because Trump's going to give them a 90-day extension. So we're still on TikTok for now. And it's Cameron Journal on Blue Sky. So make sure to check those out. I really appreciate it. I love you for watching, and I will see you next Monday at 7 Eastern for the Cameron Journal News Hour. Have a great night, everyone. Bye-bye.